And welcome to our final session of the day. This discussion is hosted by Koerber Pharma Software, and it's going to focus on digital transformation and leveraging technology to manufacture advanced therapies with partners all over the world. We'll be looking at the impact that the pandemic has had on our relationship with remote partners, the technology we're currently leveraging and the technology we wish we could leverage while trying to maintain the human side of relationship building over virtual meetings. Goodness knows we've been getting used to that. We have experts from Orchard, Bluebird, Cellectis, Thermo Fisher Scientific who will join Koerber to dig into some of these challenges. So that's the setup. Let's hand over to our moderator for this session. Over to you, Wolf.
Thank you very much, David, for the great introduction, and welcome and good afternoon, good evening, everyone. It's great to welcome you to today's panel on digital transformation and advanced therapies. So today in our session, we're going to be discussing how you can leverage digital technologies to collaborate efficiently with partners across the world. You know, in a typical year, right, we'd all be in Miami right now. It'd be nice and sunny, and we'd be looking forward to, going to the boat party after this session. And obviously, this year, unfortunately, that's not the case. So we're here, all congregating, virtually. And even though we can't meet in person, digital technologies have enabled us here to collaborate and also achieve some amazing things here over the last year, right? Especially also in our industry, in our space here. And, I can also speak here from personal experience, right? We've been able to continue working, delivering projects, and also, technologies, have been able to us to deliver. Today, I'm excited, we have a really diverse panel here, a really diverse group of, a mix of contract manufacturers, early stage biotechs, as well as technology providers. And during today's discussion, our panelists will be giving their perspective on how they have been, working with digital technologies and collaborating across the world. Just a reminder, right? If you guys have any questions, feel free to post them in the chat, and we'll try to address them here as we go along. So now, with that, before we jump into asking here the questions, I'd like to, let the panelists also introduce themselves. So we'll start here with Amandine. Would you like to go?
Yes, good evening or good afternoon, everyone. I'm Amandine. I work for Orchard Therapeutics in the Cell and Gene Therapy Technology Group, and I'm heading the drug product and sub group. And my team is really focusing on our late stage and commercial program. And we oversee transfer of technology. We oversee the manufacture of our DP at our CDMO. So I'm really happy to join this panel tonight and to discuss actually how we can use new technology to contribute and communicate with our CDMO.
Great, thank you. Lance, would you like to go next?
Sure, yeah, thank you. So Lance Holland, I'm at Bluebird Bio. I've been there since 2018. We do cell and gene therapy. I started out on the drug product side of the business, and now I work in the external vector manufacturing side of the business. So we right now are in the middle of doing a PPQ series or process validation for one of our viral vector products. And this hits home to us in terms of how do we collaborate. We've got partners in the EU that we are trying to work through these very important process validation runs from thousands of miles away. And normally we'd be there on site in the plant, working together, collaborating in that way. And this is a very real challenge that we've experienced. And so excited to kind of share my perspective and also learn from the folks that are participating in this. Thank you.
Great. Louis-Marie?
Yes, Louis-Marie Demontgrand. I've been spending 20 years in the vaccine industry, and since 2016, I am now from the CDMO part side. Being in Novacep for almost 4 years, and now transforming this to Thermo Fisher Scientific VVS Europe Viral Vector Services for Europe, and especially in Belgium. I'm really pleased to participate to this event and panel. And I'll be glad to give a kind of voice of customer from the CDMO, but maybe also a little bit the part from some big pharma from Europe where I worked with in the past.
Great, thank you. And Dan.
Sure. Dan Bright, I'm the Director of Manufacturing Operations for Cellectis, US. So we're down in Raleigh here. Similar experience to what everybody else has going on in terms of remote collaboration and ongoing challenges related to the new reality that we're working under. For us in particular, I'm in the process of bringing up a brand new manufacturing facility. So we're doing a lot of remote FAT, virtual FAT work for different pieces of equipment, remote qualification work, and then also tech transferring in processes from our partners, our CDMO partners in the EU. So sort of an overlapping challenge where, similar to what Lance was saying, right? We'd love to bring my team out to the EU to visit the CDMO sites and be hands-on, see that the process executed in the room. And the reality is that that's just not possible, right? So there's been a lot of creative and strategic approaches to using technology to work our way through these challenges this year. And I'm equally excited to be a part of this panel.
Great. Yeah, so we have a really diverse group here, so really excited to dive into the questions here. So let me start, with the first one, right? And I think Dan and Lance, you guys just already touched on it, but really, with us, and I assume most of us here, are dialing in from home, right? We've probably done that, since March, right? How have your ways of working, changed both internally, right, with your teams, and that you work on a day-to-day basis, as well as also with your partners, right, your contract manufacturers? What have you done to adopt? And maybe let's start with Amandine here.
Yes, so it's actually, I think, altered in a way with the way we operate. At first, it's not been such a big change for us. We had part of the team in the US. We were using a lot of mix of Zoom meeting to actually connect and discuss internally. So from that side, in a way, the early part of the pandemic didn't change much. Except a high increase in Zoom call volume during the day. And same thing for our CDMO relationship and external relationship. I have to say, I didn't previously mention that I just joined Orchard maybe 4 or 5 months before the pandemic started and I had to stay at home. So in my sense, again, I didn't have the opportunity to go and meet our CDMO at that stage. So that didn't change anything in my relationship with them. Now, I was at a key maybe part of my adventure with Orchard, where it was essential maybe to start creating some link with our CDMO, to start to know their manufacturing site and all. So that was a critical point. And maybe what I had to work on more was how to create a relationship and get to know people when I was not able to go there on site.
Yeah, to build upon that, I think, so I joined in this particular project in June, so similar to Amandine, new partnerships, new relationships, new internal team, and a new CMO team. And so I think the relationship building piece was certainly unique. And, the way to overcome that was just a lot of video chat. So I think, sadly, people don't put the video on enough, but I've tried to do more videos so that people can see body language. And, as much as I don't want to do that, I do it more for the sake of building the relationships. So that was, I would say, a bit of a sacrifice. I'm a bit of an introvert and don't want to be on camera, but I do it as part of the job. I think the other big challenge to overcome was really the internal discussion, because for us, we always were doing it virtual, with our CMO partners. It was always a Zoom call, but we were all in the same room on our side. And so the meetings before the meetings after the meetings, all the hallway talk to sort of collaborate and figure out and align so that we had one shared voice to the CMO, that's what suffered the most. And so I think we've had to build in and be very intentional about building in little, times after the meetings or little quick 15-minute, hey, how do we actually feel about that so that we can share one voice? And I think that's been one of the bigger challenges is how do we make sure we're talking and aligning? Because before you could put it on mute and you could all have that conversation and come back, and you can't do that anymore. So, or we haven't done it. So maybe you can do it through like breakout rooms, but we haven't gotten that sophisticated. So there's a lot of chatting, like I am chatting where you're trying to align and not be distracted. But I think managing all of that is one of the bigger challenges.
Right. And just curious, maybe a question here for Dan. I know in your introduction, you mentioned you're doing like remote FATs, and I know, Cellectis is building a facility also here in the Research Triangle region. Like, how are you guys doing like such a complex project? I assume a lot of you guys are working remotely, right? So what are some of the things you guys have done there?
Yeah, so there's some overlapping things, right? FATs, especially for large critical process equipment and systems, it's very much preferable to be on site, so you can see things, you can ask questions, you can respond, on the spot. One of the ways that we've really adapted to manage these challenges is by inclusion of the Microsoft HoloLens system in particular has been really helpful. Being able to send those systems out to our partners and have their technicians actually wearing the units on their head, right? We're still getting used to the augmented reality piece of things where you can sort of identify and tap your screen or draw circles around things and drop arrows into the augmented reality system to help pinpoint what your questions might be about. But it's been a really helpful way to get a real serious point of view from the technicians who are executing that work. We did realize, though, very quickly, very early on, that you can't just rely on that as a standalone system, because there's so much physical activity and movement involved in a lot of these exercises. So what we've started to do is develop packages of audio visual systems that we're sending out, right? So cameras that we know are going to give us a proper visual, right? Sending out microphones that you can scatter around the workspace so that nobody's ever too far from the system. Sending out wireless hotspots so that you're not necessarily completely reliant on the wireless system that a company might have, where they're doing all of their day-to-day operations off that system. They may be doing multiple FATs at the same time, so you start losing video, you lose connectivity, you lose critical comments from the team. And as we all know, right, the last thing you want to do is ask an engineer to break their stream of thought and go back 5 minutes because you feel like you missed something, right? It just causes serious issues. So there's been an ongoing evolution and adaptation that we're not just applying to things like FATs, we're also being able to apply them in reverse for SAT testing, right? And for ongoing training for, remote process training, where again, you'd much rather be, physically in person for all of these activities.
Very interesting. And just curious that maybe also to the general group here, but if you look at these kind of complex projects, what type of effect does this have on the timeline? Like, do you see the timeline is getting larger, or is it the same, or maybe even it's faster because people have more time to focus on their day-to-day job? Have you guys seen anything there?
So I think I've seen drift in both directions for us, right? Things like reviewing documentation. If you're on site, you can do that very quickly. That takes a lot longer when you've got to pass things back and forth. You're losing multiple days when you're operating across different time zones and you're scanning dozens, if not hundreds of pages. But things like actual execution are actually going a little bit more smoothly due to our ability to watch and communicate in parallel streams. So ultimately a net zero effect for what we're trying to accomplish, for me at least.
I think from the past, when I was from the engineering part within very big pharma, what I saw as a great step in the communication was the fact that we could communicate with design review, with 3D reviews on the equipment and different things. And really, at that time, the technology was a huge progress. Now we're changing this, and I don't think it will shorten the project, but at least there will not be anymore any misunderstanding between the parties inside the project, and really you can anticipate a lot more some questions within the teams on the maintenance aspect, on different things. So it's easier to share information, technologies, and things with the IT tools. And then specifically, I use a lot the 3D tools with specific software like CAD, Inventor, and others. And really was a great tool to help everybody to be on board and assume all the decisions we took for those technologies.
Great, very interesting. Yeah, maybe just to go back a little bit to the the CMO partner perspective. Maybe Louis-Marie, let's just stay with you. And I know so you and Lance know each other. Just curious, like how has it that relationship between CMO and your partners changed over the last year, right? Maybe if you can talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, sure. The very first thing I can see is a change in the mindset and in the way to see the relationship. Within the past, we were really delivering services and expecting just to have something that is coherent with the contract. The more we go on now with the technology, I can feel that there is a real willingness to go on partnership. Partnership, what does it mean? Trust and push-pull. Because you need to share information and you need to discuss and challenge and agree. And even if sometimes there are some diverging ideas or things like that, by the end, we agree that we should achieve the same target. So that's really the most important thing. And I could see that with the technology, with the IT technology, we could definitely change the way of working. In the past, we were using lots of mails, writing all the details, expecting answers by the night, and then replying the day after, and etc. etc. Today, less written details, but sharing practices, sharing difficulties, sometimes having some doubts about the way to troubleshoot, etc. But at least we show transparency, we show open mind, and we are really willing to go together. That's the main change I could see, at least during the last months. As you said, we're working with Bluebird Bio and specifically with Lance, and really this is something new for us.
Yeah, if I can add to it, I think what we aligned on is it's still all about relationships. It's still partnerships. It's still the human element. So even though we can't physically be there, Louis-Marie and I realized we do have to invest in that relationship and build the trust. It's all the same principles that applied when you could be physically there, and now it's actually maybe even more important because you have to do it remotely. So, one of the things that I thought was really cool that Louis-Marie invited us to their year-end kind of leadership meeting. How did we do at the end of 2020 and looking forward to 2021? And, as the voice of the customer, and we kind of aligned on what's our shared vision. And we kind of had this, acronym CARE, and it was communication and healthy conflict, because I don't think we were engaging in enough healthy conflict. And it's hard when you're not there and you have to do that remotely. A is accountability, so holding each other accountable, holding our teams accountable, and then as the partnership being accountable. And R was relationships, so really investing in that relationship, building trust. And then E was, we said it could be efficiency, it could be excellence, but those will come if we have empathy and we actually understand what each group is dealing with and the challenges that we're facing, and we're doing all those other things. We will achieve excellence and we will be efficient over time. I don't think it's happened as fast as we would like, but that's the goal. It's aspirational, and as long as we're connected to that, whether you're electronic or in person, those principles still apply, and I think we forget that sometimes in the virtual world.
Would you like to say something, Amandine? I saw you went on mute.
Yeah, no, I think I really completely relate to that and the human side of things, and the partnership is quite key. This is really like a sort of symbiosis. We have the same target, the same timeline, and we're there for the patient, especially in cell and gene therapy, where it nearly become more personal. Orchard is autologous therapy. It's just one patient at a time. One drug product is one patient. So there's all that emotional link also that create a bond with the CDMO. And I've been through process qualification during the summer with our CDMO. And yes, we all work for the same thing. So we need to work hand in hand and collaborate. And that's true that this year, not having maybe the real human touch and contact, the direct contact, has been hard, but we all find new ways or other way to create those links to just work together better. So yeah, I can only relate with what Lance and Louis-Marie just said.
Yeah, and just to add to that, I feel like there's a lot of balance going on with everything that we're going through right now, because as much as we've lost the in-person opportunities for contact, I've seen a lot of calls that would have been a call over a speakerphone with a bunch of blank faces in a room, right, where you don't ever get to actually see the other person. Lance and I have been on a few of those calls ourselves, right, where there's a dozen people on either end of the phone, and some people you may not even know are in the room, right? But adding these larger conferencing systems when people are still in the room together, when the few people who need to be on site, or adding the gallery of faces where you can actually see, back to Lance's earlier comment about body language, expression, right? So as difficult as it's been to lose that in-person contact, right, and connection, it's made certain phone calls and conversations that have that potential to get difficult, right? I feel like it's added a human element to a different aspect of how we communicate, and I feel like I've seen a lot of, so as much as there are a lot of challenges with this right now, I feel like when we come out the other side of this, the evolution we're going to go through, not just as a field, but for the business world in general, there's going to be a lot of really net positive changes, right, for how everybody goes about their business.
Yeah, I mean, just curious from my side, right? And again, this is, I think, across all companies, like those. What's really like what I'm missing sometimes is, those I don't know, what are they, water cooler conversations. Like, how do you replicate that? Like, do you guys have any tips or techniques, right? Like, how you, you're not 100% always focusing on business, but maybe, also getting to know your coworkers or your partners a little bit. Like, is there anybody have anything that they want to say here?
So it's a really good one, because I think it became this year, you got those Zoom meeting lineup or those team meetings lineup, and you lose, actually, you got an object, you know what you're going to talk about, and you just go straight in. There's no more that walking through the door, holding your coffee, letting somebody pass before you, say hi. You can't have that maybe 2-minute pre-chat with your colleague before a big meeting saying, are we aligned? Everything is fine. Everything is so contrived in a way in this world. Like, everything needs to be scheduled at the moment, sort of. So yeah, how do we reintegrate a more human side of thing and just forget about talking about work? And I'm sure everybody will have plenty of example and all, but what we have been doing, in a way, in some of the program and team I've been involved with, is every time there's been something to celebrate, we actually try to just schedule a 20-minute tea and coffee break. And the aim was just like, because otherwise we're going to move on to the next piece of work, and nobody will stop and say, like, that's great. So it's like, there's a tea and coffee at the end of the week. And it's just because we finished that PPQ campaign, and let's just like sit, all of us, with a coffee and just have a chat about everything and anything but work. And that's been my saving grace at some point at the end of the summer. It was really nice to just recreate that coffee break thing. And yeah, just virtual quiz, Zoom party, We've been trying a few things. I mean, Orchard has been through actually a launch, and we had like the launch party online, which actually worked really, really well. There's a lot of work involved in preparing these things, so it's amazing, but it's worth doing. It just recreates that sort of, night at the pub after work when everybody just fancy staying a bit longer tonight. So, yeah.
That's a good one. So I will say that I'm not a big fan of the big happy hours. I know that I should embrace them, and I need some coaching from folks to sort of do it, because I more rather work in smaller groups, and I just find them awkward, honestly. However, I do make a concerted effort to try to do them every once in a while, and I recognize that not everyone's the same. I do a lot of I am chatting, and I use GIFs to actually communicate a lot, because I think it's a lot more fun, and just dropping little chats here and there. And so that's my version of the water cooler talk, or just, hey, I was thinking about you, and I hit people up. I'm probably distracting them like crazy all throughout the day, but it's usually a welcome distraction, because I don't know, it's fun. You get the GIFs, it can say a lot with a picture. And so I find that to be fun. And I also just schedule a lot of one-on-ones. And I think I've always done that, but now I think you have to do them even more to really build the relationships. And, when it's 2 or 3 people, it's easier to do video. You're not talking all over each other. So I move in darkness behind the scenes in small little groups, but it works.
Right.
I remember once, Lance, when you brought your glasses, and we brought the next meeting. Yeah, exactly. That's just a tip that you can bring. You make everybody laugh, and that's fun. And then we're back to work.
Yeah, and in really tense conversations, really heated moments, sometimes it's fun just to throw those on.
Exactly.
And just, because you have to laugh, you have to have fun, and I think we forget to do that. Like you were saying, Amandine, it's like business, and we still have to be human and make time for those sorts of things and try to have fun.
I have to say, I like that the glasses are at the ready there. And one other thing that I'll throw out there, we iterated through a couple different chat programs since I've joined the company here, and one of the things that what we've settled on at this point is Teams. And one of the really nice things about Teams, because it integrates with Outlook, if your organization is using Outlook to schedule within Teams, I can see if you're set to do not disturb, if you're actively in a meeting, right? So I'm able to ping people with those fun little, I'm going to call them GIFs, because that's the way I like to pronounce it. But when they're not busy, right? So because I have the same thing, right? I always feel like I don't want to interrupt your day with something when you're trying to focus. But it's been really nice. Some of the new integrations that companies are coming out with, and you're seeing, more of these sort of external chat system providers trying to move towards integration processes like that. And I think that'll be part of the overall journey that's going to come out of this, because that's been a real benefit for me, at least personally.
Yeah, there's a lot of great tools out there. Actually, we just had a question come in here, which I think fits pretty well in here, our discussion here right now. It's around how should we adopt the onboarding process for new team members during the pandemic when all interactions are remote, not face-to-face? I think, Amandine, you mentioned, right, maybe that you kind of joined right before the pandemic. Maybe let's start with you, and if any of the others have any perspective, would be great.
Yes, well, at least I had the chance yet to spend a few months in the office, so I'm good. But we had actually onboarded quite a few people in the team, and we're still trying to find the best way to do it. And I think there's several ways. I personally had a new starter back in October, and we decided that maybe to avoid feeling lonely and remote compared to, you come to the office, you meet the faces. And also one of the first thing for me was to install actually a regular catch up in the week, instead of doing that once a week and then we're gone. We actually have touching base all through the week, so anything that will come up, we could discuss about it and all that. I think that was quite essential. But then it just maybe again, going back to those coffee discussion and coffee breaks, is maybe making sure that we can pair new starter with somebody. And I think the buddy within the team, that's something that our team has been discussing a lot, and we're going to implement. So any new starter will have like a buddy within the department. So that would be that person, that usually you're a new starter, you got your desk and somebody is sitting next to you. And when you got a problem with IT, when you don't know how to join the system, you can just look at that person and say, can you help me? So trying to recreate that is quite key, because what you don't want is people to feel isolated. So it's how do you bring that team spirit to somebody that never been in the office and never met anyone. And it can be overwhelming, those Zoom call with 30 people, 30 faces in one go. And by the end of it, you still don't remember any names. So yeah, just that's one way we've been thinking about it.
Right. Anybody else want to add to that, or?
So I personally went through the onboarding process in April, right? So mid pandemic, we moved from New Jersey to North Carolina, so it was quite a process. One of the things that we've done is that we've been doing ongoing reviews, right? Live reviews of the process of critical quality type conversations, just different sort of high level 30,000 foot overviews of what we're trying to accomplish in different areas of the business, right? So new people can join. These happen monthly, but also so people who've been here for a while who want a refresher, who want to come back, because obviously roadmaps get updated and priorities and goals change as you go. So we've got, for certain things, we've got recorded copies of these sort of talks and conversations, especially the shorter ones that you can have in a half an hour or an hour, where people can go and check at any time. The ones that are more of an evolutionary topic, right? Especially roadmaps and that sort of thing. We have those monthly, and those we found to be a really beneficial piece of this. So whereas you might have historically gotten a review of your piece or what your department would be responsible for, this is giving a much more holistic overview. So it kind of keeps people on track to the total picture, because you've got that distance that's inherent in working from home. We're trying to make it, we're trying to bring people back together as much as possible and keep that focus on the big picture, as much as we're still working on those details remotely.
That's good. Yeah, and that's great, Dan. That's a good idea. We did a lot of those at Bluebird Bio when we were all there, but I think we probably need to go back to more of that now that we're remote. And then for Amandine, I think one of the things that Bluebird Bio does, I like the buddy idea. Another thing that we do too, and we did it even when we were all physically there, but we call it a random cup of Joe. And we've got this you put your name in the system and it scrambles it, and it basically pairs you up with someone that you probably would never work with or would never have met. And it was great to do it, and we would meet up and we would have coffee, but we still do that electronically too. So to kind of expand your network even beyond the folks that you would normally work with. And I think it helps sort of create that same culture that we kind of miss when we're not physically there in the building together. So I like your buddy idea, and that's something that we do just to sort of scramble it around a little bit, so that you're meeting people you might not even work with or run into in the hallway.
That's a great idea. I just wrote that down here. I think I'm going to take that.
Yeah, I'm keeping that one too. I really like it.
Awesome. Great discussion so far. Maybe just to pivot here a little bit and talk a little bit more about, digital transformation and, just technologies. We did have some poll results come in here just regarding this augmented reality. I know, Dan, you mentioned you guys are using that. About 17% of the participants on this call, they're actually using that in their facility, which I actually think that's a pretty good number. I would have expected something smaller. 56% are using video conferencing tools. AI machine learning 6%, and then MES system and ERP also 6%. So some interesting numbers there. Like one thing that we've seen and as a technology provider here over the last year is really an acceleration also into that digital transformation, right? Not just on the I don't want to call like the Zoom meetings and stuff on the consumer side, but more like also on the industrial or like within, your manufacturing space, right? Where traditionally you might have used maybe like paper-based processes or more manual. Now there's a shift towards, capturing data electronically, using artificial intelligence and all that sort of stuff. Maybe Dan, just this question for you, right? I know, again, you guys are building, 2 new facilities. What type of digital strategy are you guys, adopting here?
So we're very early stage, right? As much as the industry is at the moment, right? So we end up starting out with paper where we don't necessarily want to. But in terms of a digital strategy, right? There's been, again, I keep sort of hearing myself say the word evolution as we're going through this conversation today. There's definitely been an examination of priorities, right, as we move forward, and there's this ongoing evolutionary process that we go through, is particularly with the IT roadmap, right? Because the more we see or the more we foresee an ongoing challenge with COVID, right? Optimally, we would have had this whole sort of global situation nipped in the bud by now, right? And if you went back a year and you looked at what a lot of the experts, right, and politicians were saying, this was going to be a non-issue. But the further we get into this and the more we understand, A, the mutations that we're seeing with the virus, B, the societal challenges with getting people to, follow preventative measures, the challenges we're going to see with getting people convinced to vaccinate. I think this is going to be with us a lot longer, or for a lot longer than we originally anticipated. So there's this kind of visiting and revisiting and prioritization process that we're going through, particularly when it comes to the IT roadmap. Things like electronic batch records, that's always something you want to get to sooner rather than later, right? In any area of the field, especially when you're going clinical to commercial. But the importance of that ratchets up, right? I think that in particular, and I'll make a plug for your product. I've heard a lot of good things about it, right? So there's some providers in the field that really seem to have taken that to heart and seem to be driving forward their platforms, their technological offerings, apace with the challenges that we're seeing in the field. So, right, connectivity, utilizing cloud systems, getting things like, EBRs in place, MES systems in place, LIMS systems in place. These are all important in any, at any stage, pre-COVID, during COVID, hopefully the future post-COVID world. But I think you're going to see a lot more importance placed on that, because I think that a lot of the changes that we're undergoing, due to dealing with the current global situation, are going to stay with us, right? Even once we get through all of this and we're out the other side. There's a lot of benefits that are coming out of this. There's a lot of learnings we're taking away from it. And this is the first true shift I think you're going to see across the business world, to a new way of operating, not just for the pharmaceutical industry, but across all industries that don't require a physical human presence.
Yeah, very interesting. Maybe this one's for you, Lance. Just curious. I mean, when you're working, with your contract manufacturers, maybe I'm putting here Louis Marie on the spot, I don't know, but how do you kind of get them to also embrace these type of digital technologies, or do you expect that of them, or and has that changed, also again with over the last year?
Yeah, so it's a good question. I would say, right, it starts with a relationship, and I think, again, like Amandine said, we have the same goal in mind, and so we want a lot of the same things to solve for the same goal. So I would say where it becomes a challenge is, the specifics in terms of what can the other company take on, what's their IT infrastructure, what's their, it's a cost thing that I can only influence so much. But I think there's easy things to embrace. I think we all and I don't know if it was because of us, but we're all on the same platform of Teams now, which is a huge help. Before we were on different platforms, and that was actually quite, so it's a small thing, but it was important for us to be on the same platform, and it's easier to share things. So I think that helped. I will say for one of the things we had to do was a virtual person implant. I'm very much intrigued by Dan and the fact that they're using the HoloLens, and I want to ask a million questions because right now we are using sort of Teams and we're using a tablet, and but there's also considerations that Louis Marie has to make for his staff and what they're comfortable with. So it's a give and take, and it's as long as we're still talking through it and we're trying to find a common solution. But there are real challenges that that he has to face through his business, that he has to get buy-in. And I totally appreciate that, but I'm still going to push and we're still going to ask if we can have other solutions. And, we do the virtual PIP through Teams and the tablet, and it's great. Obviously I would love HoloLens. I'm sure Louis Marie would as well. But now we have to take that to, management and discussions and funding and all those things. But we're certainly both interested. I think everyone understands the need and the value. And I know Louis Marie has probably other customers who would want the same thing. So then it's a matter of how do we make it work for everyone? And it's not just, us and Bluebird pushing down what we want, but it has to be something that's beneficial to Louis Marie and his team as well. And so I'm sure there's always that push-pull like Louis Marie talked about.
Sorry, I was disconnected a few seconds. I agree with you, Lance, for sure. What I feel is that we are at the very early step of an amazing journey, really amazing journey, because I think we've been discussing a lot on the human and collective intelligence, trying to share information, the human behaviors, that's the topic, to keep the contact with the people. We're talking about information system because I think this is the basic, just to have a good communication and could have a continuous exchange with the people. But one of the things where I do I am eager to learn and to develop things is on the automation and technology part, because bringing those four pillars together, then we would be able, I hope, maybe within the near future, and we can be sometimes amazed by the technology, to share online some batch production with some automation aspect, like on the FMS, like on the AMS, alarm management system, so that our customer could, by the end, be like if he was in our site, without being really physically on site. But this is the things. So I'm looking to really develop the last four pillars, just to bring them together and have a more structured discussion with our clients. Because currently, most of the discussion we are doing with Zoom and other things are human behavior related or collective intelligence related. And if we structure it with some tools that are already existing, but at the very early steps of the development, then we can make some relation with some tools like multivariate data, mechanistic modeling. That means some statistical data that could show up to our client that even if one value is just below the specification, it's not so much important, because we're still in a range that is acceptable for either the pharma industry or different things. So really, to my point of view, we have reached the nice part of the communication, that is human behavior. But now we need also to bring more science, more technology, more automation, so that we will avoid hours of discussion, because we will have all the information available between the CDMO and the client. And so if there is a deviation, you can have already almost most of the information available on the system, so that we stick to the real root cause on the problem, and we don't ask too many questions, because the client doesn't have all the information, and he wants to be like if he was on site, but in fact he's asking so many things that the discussion could not raise the root cause. It was just to explain to the client that what was the context. And I'm expecting really to go deeper in this, and then with this, and I will finish with this feedback. I think we have to go back to two axes, science and time. And if you relate those two axes, you have the reality with the data, but then you can do the virtual things by training with e-learnings, with different tools. With the knowledge, you can go deeper in the deep learning steps. With the reality and the knowledge, you can optimize with some statistics the process. So really, if we bring this fourth pillar into the technology, believe me, I think our job is going to be tremendously different from what we are doing today.
Great. Lance, do you want to say something, or so you want to unmute? No, totally, very interesting. Maybe just to go back to, because Lance, I think you were kind of hinting at it as well, because I'm interested in hearing a little bit more from you, Dan, about the HoloLens, and like how did you, like, on a practical level, like implement that? Like, how did operators respond, or the end users respond? How did you get that implemented?
So I think there was a little bit of hesitancy at first, and apologies, I have a visitor.
I got the same at home too. We could also pause here for a second and go to the next question.
Yeah, no, she's gone now. She's 2-year-olds. What can you do? So there was a little bit of hesitancy at first. The nice thing with the HoloLens is it doesn't really obstruct people's ability to operate. It doesn't obstruct people's vision too terribly, right? The technicians were able to get into, we utilize it very, very heavily on an FAT for some very large, very critical equipment that we had custom built for the facility here. People were able to get into all the spaces that they normally needed to get into. They were able to get at the angles they needed to get at without feeling uncomfortable, without feeling like they couldn't do the detail work that they were there to do. We had to couple it with a Bluetooth headset because the built-in mic, this just for anybody who is thinking about doing this, the built-in mic it either doesn't pick up the conversation as well as you want it to, or it picks up a ton of background noise, whereas coupling it with a Bluetooth headset sort of solved that issue. One of the big issues we did run into was battery life. So you're going to want to get a couple of these because it will die, and Murphy's Law, it's going to die at the worst possible moment for you. But strategic use of the HoloLens really enabled us to feel like we were actually there, and to see, when something went wrong, the technician was able to get inside the equipment and point directly at, as though they were looking, directly at the item from their own point of view, and explain to us, here's what happened, here's why it happened, here's what we're going to address it, and here's how quickly we can address it. And even though we weren't able to be there, right, that coupled with having one representative from one of our engineering partners who was already located out in the EU and was able to make that trip to support us, it really made the whole process extremely smooth. We've repeated that process a few times since then for a few different parts of what we're doing. And like I mentioned or alluded to earlier, we've since coupled it with some remote stationary microphones around the space that we're working in, and then a couple of stationary webcams that we've linked up. Again, I would also recommend, if you're doing this, to make sure you've got appropriate bandwidth, right? Similar to these sort of presentations that you're doing. If you don't have the right bandwidth, you're going to lose a lot of the benefit from this. Stuttering video, static, etc. So we found the application of wireless hotspots to be really helpful. It's an additional cost, but the cost is really minor when you consider how much you're paying for this kind of work in general. And it assures you that you can get your work done, and it also reduces the need for the client to have to expand or build a second network within their system that they're just doing for a single thing, right? So for Lance, for Amandine, when you're working with a CMO, you can bring in your own wireless hotspots. You're paying those bills directly. You don't have to deal with adding a whole layer of billing and conversations to the client where they may only use this for you today, and they may not be ready to, or to the CDMO rather, where they may not be ready to institute an entire system like this on their end. So our ability to kind of provide that whole system as an all-in-one package, give the CMO or the external supplier a training on how to use it, and then let them go to work, made things easier on them. It made it so we knew we had a system that worked for us, and it's something we're gonna continue. We've started using it on equipment qualifications and things like that as well, and it's been really, really great across the board, to be honest with you.
I've got a selfish question, but would you envision using those in clean rooms? Do you think that technology would work in that kind of environment?
So I think the technology would work in that kind of environment. I think you might want to couple it with a stationary, right? It depends on what you're using. Isolators are a little more challenging because you're going to deal with glare. But a BSC, the angle that you're standing at, not that much of a challenge. I think if you couple that, we've tried out multiple different iterations of this. We've coupled that. The version that I have found the most successful is to couple that with a webcam or two mounted on one or the other side of the BSC, and potentially a chest-mounted webcam, a la a GoPro, something of that nature, right? So that you can you're getting the top-down view from the point of view of the operator. You're getting a front-on view from the center of their chest, which is usually, if they're seated in a comfortable position for them, that chest band can be situated at a site where you are seeing directly level with the operation going on the surface of the BSC. And then that other stationary mounted camera, you can put that, there's always a side of the BSC that nobody uses or is used less frequently, right? Maybe not always, but usually in my experience, you've got a side that's less convenient to get to, or you only pass waste out that side and you're passing the majority of your materials. There's more activity in and out the left side, for example. So you want to position that webcam strategically, but that gives you another sort of point of view. And back to what Louis Marie was talking about, this can answer a lot of questions. I haven't had this particular part of the experience yet, but I can envision, having been involved in a lot of very intensive video reviews around deviations and contamination concerns and things of that nature, I could envision this angle setup being really helpful to answer the questions. Was it technique? Were people following the process to clean in materials? Did we break the barrier when we handed materials in, or was it passed via the appropriate method? So there's a layer, there's multiple layers. It's not just seeing the process executed, it's making sure, right? And it injects a whole layer of accountability in there. Now, that being said, it can feel a little big brothery, right? So there's a sort of, a level of trust that you need to reach with your external partners. It's a two-way street. You can't leave them out there on their own feeling like, if anything goes wrong, it's just all finger pointing going their direction, because that reduces their willingness to be part of a program like this, right? So, but provided you have that relationship and that mutual trust, this is a system that I think can really go a long way to addressing a lot of issues.
Really interesting. Maybe just a follow-up question to that. So it sounds like you're currently, like when you're using the HoloLens, it's just getting the image, right? Basically as a camera. So you're not using it as like an augmented, like you're not projecting like work instructions or something onto the HoloLens at this moment, right? Or are you already using it?
So we haven't gotten to the point of using it in our clean rooms, but we have gotten to the point of, if we have a question about something that somebody is doing, right, an activity they're executing, where we could ask them, hey, hold up, what's that? And then you can draw a little arrow pointing to that. It is difficult because it's head mounted. So, the arrow is not going to be perfect, and right, nobody holds their head perfectly stable, right? But it's been helpful where we've been able to circle things and ask questions about them on sort of an ongoing basis.
Right. So we have a couple minutes left here. Maybe I think we went through the majority of the questions here, but just wanted to any of our panelists here, if there's anything else you guys would like to share before we start wrapping up here for the day.
I could ask a million questions because now Dan knows he's going to get some emails from me now, or if you don't, now you know. But
by all means,
no, I think it's really cool that you've been able to leverage that technology, and I think it's aspirational for probably a lot of folks. So I'll just say thank you for that. It really opened up my mind of what's possible, and like you said, it comes down to partnerships and what works for both sides, because with that awesome opportunity comes awesome responsibility to handle that technology in the right way, like you talked about, right? Because it can't be a blame culture, it can't be pointing the finger, it has to be truly collaborative. That's a lot to allow someone in to see video and to do those things. And so I think to connect it all the way back, it still comes down to those relationships and trust, and to be able to partner in that way. So thank you for sharing that. Appreciate it.
Yeah, well said. I'll keep an eye out for the emails.
Awesome. Yeah, so just want to thank all of you guys here, for taking the time, being part of this panel. I think, what we learned, right, obviously digital technologies, right, helped us all get here today and helped us succeed. But in the end, right, we're still all human, and that human connection is extremely important in everything we do. And also, right, that's all why we're here as well, right? We're providing all life-saving technologies to our patients, right? So in the end, that's really, that is the end goal here. With that, again, thanks so much for being here. Thanks for being part of the panel, and I'll hand it over back to David in the head studio.
Fantastic. Thank you very much indeed. Really, really interesting discussion. Lots and lots to take away. And I think a lot of shared experiences. Obviously, we've all been living this world of trying to reach out to new colleagues. I love hearing stories of people who've started working for new organizations, or at least new to them organizations, and stories about how they have been able to feel part of a team that they've never met. That's part of our experience today. And that idea about going for coffee with a stranger from the organization, even if you've worked there for a very long time, that's certainly something that I'm going to take away and suggest with some of my clients. Thank you very, very much, Velf. Thank you very much indeed to all the rest of the team. So we are almost ready to close for the day today. But before we do, I have Gosha with me from the Facilitate team to say a good evening to you all. Gosha, are you there? And tell me, what did you make of the day today?
Hi, David, and hello, everyone. It's been so great to see everyone today engaging in the content and in the meetings. And I have to admit, it's not been quite the same as being able to see all of you face to face, but it has warmed my heart to see so many familiar faces, even virtually. So right now, I'm very much looking forward to some rest and this evening, and more productive discussions tomorrow. So I will see you then.
Oh, thank you very much, Gosh. I look forward to seeing you tomorrow, and look forward to seeing as many of you from wherever you're joining us from, whether over in the United States or over in Europe or anywhere else in the world as well. Thank you very much indeed for taking your time out to join us today, and we look forward to welcoming you back tomorrow. Stay safe wherever you are.